Hello, crypto boys and ghouls, and welcome to Splinterlands TV. We have a exciting program scheduled for today. Very exciting. We have with us the one, the only, Infidel1258, Dwayne Cunningham. Welcome to Splinterlands TV. I know you were just here last night, back again, but we appreciate it.
Hey man, thanks for having me on, Tails. We were chatting in Discord earlier today, and like Rogue was joking, it's like come back from vacation, and there's just so much going on, and you're excited. I'm excited to be talking about it, and I just love chatting with you, and I always watch your videos, and I really appreciate and respect your view on what you bring to Splinterland. So the opportunity to chat, I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Well, definitely love having you on here. And we were talking, I think, in our Discord here on the content creator side. And what I think is so great about the Splinterlands community is really the ability for us as content creators to come together and have these collaborations and just talk shop. Because, I mean, I think that's where some of the best conversations around Splinterlands happens is, when you just have either the audience in the chat or us on stream just talking about things that we love and are passionate about. And there is no shortage of news to cover today. I mean, we've got the town hall coming up on Monday, which we don't really have an idea of what's going to happen there, but it really doesn't matter because there's just so much going in the game. And maybe we can start by just kind of revisiting this last week. I know you were on vacation, but you were putting out content like a madman on the schedule, and just had some great stuff out there. And one of the videos that we were chatting about in the comments section was talking about when you have an opportunity to sell a card like a summoner, for example, and reinvest in something else to kind of capitalize on that timing and that opportunity, not only of money, but meta, win rates and possible future price appreciation. And I thought there was really some good conversation we had offline in the chat there. And I think, when I come to look at that and analyze that, I think what we saw is that I think we both had different points that were certainly very, very valid and true in his advice or kind of just general sentiment to provide to our audiences. I thought it was very applicable. But I think what was interesting is, as you mentioned in your video, there was nuances, right, between what we were saying. We're saying not the same thing, but two different things, and it really depended on, I think, from what point of view you looked at the statements. And that's what I think is great about again, as content creators, how we can have a voice and kind of talk to, similar challenges in the game or similar opportunities in the game and have different paths to potential success. So,
Totally. Yeah, man, I totally agree. This is one of those games that is unique in sort of the diversity of opportunities with which it can provide income generating potential. So it's like, whether it's like, I heard you did the video talking about how you're kind of doing, you're renting some of your cards for part of the season, then you're using it in one account, and then you're moving some of them into a different account, and you're trying, there's so much thoughtfulness for what you're doing to really extract the most value for the cards and the assets and the time that you have to invest. And and every single person has a different kind of story, and I've heard you say, and we're all on a different journey. It's like we're all at different stages. We all have different decks, we all have different resources behind us, and every one of us has like a different kind of moment that we're in where thoughtfulness is super important in that, so that you can really get the most out of it. And the sort of, hopefully, conversation like that one, and maybe tonight, will just be gearing people's minds around the fact that it isn't always black or white, yes or no, binary options. It's like, do you want to rent for part of the season? Do you want to play multiple accounts? Do you want to buy some old cards and fight in wild? Do you want to play just in modern? Like, are you going to get validator nodes, SPS, DEC? Like, there's a million things. and they each represent an opportunity, but they also have a cost. And so that's the nuance. Like you have to bear in mind there's always an opportunity cost, whether it's holding on to an Alric because we want to see appreciation come back to that card. There's an opportunity cost where $900 for a card like that today might stretch further today than it will in 4 or 5 years when Alric possibly pops to $2,000, $3,000, because I think he will. But that's not everybody can see things in that manner. And I for my audience, I think you two would just really want to urge people to really dive deeper into thinking about it, because this could change their lives. Like this game legitimately could. NFT blockchain gaming can literally change your life financially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the things that sometimes I have to try and remind myself is, when I produce videos, it's a lot of times from my point of view or perspective and how I view the game, because, again, the way I'm playing the game right now might be different from the audience. Like I might be playing cards at maybe, a diamond level or champion level, and the audience may be playing it at bronze or silver or gold, and those are different abilities, different strategies, different metas, different perspectives. So, I think what's sometimes hard for us to do sometimes is to come back and say, yeah, not everyone's going to have the same perspective that I'll have. So my advice, may not be relevant at all, because like you said, everyone's got a different journey for Splinterlands. But that's why I think it's great to have not only us talking about our experiences and how we might be doing things differently, or how we might be approaching different opportunities in the game differently, but I think just by some of the chats in YouTube and the comment section and on the streams really bring a complete perspective that really the community can learn from at the end of the day. And I think that's what's valuable, because like you said, I mean, this blockchain game Splinterlands has the ability to change lives, I think. And I think if you pay attention now and you make good moves and good decisions, it's going to set you up ultimately for more success. And really what's nice about what we do as content creators is, if we help the community, by nature, we help ourselves. It's not like a competitive situation, right? It's not like where my collection power, my cards, and what I do is going to move the market. I'm just, a blip in the radar, right? So, but if we can all kind of find ways to maximize our time and our assets and our money that we put into this, it kind of uplifts everyone. And I think that's why it's a very positive community at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's the really cool, crazy thing. Like we aren't. This isn't confrontational. It's like there's actually an opportunity for you to really crush it here, and for everyone who's watching, and simultaneously me. And there's not an adversarial. There doesn't have to be an adversarial nature to what we're doing. And I heard Cimarron say that I'm a bit quiet, so I did remove my noise gate. Let me know if the audio quality has dramatically changed, maybe gotten worse, and I can reinstitute that, guys. But it should be louder, I would think.
Okay, hopefully it is. I've got Discord pumped up to 200%, so can't go to 11 on Discord, unfortunately. So, but yeah, so it's definitely interesting, and I think the timing. We were talking before the stream a little bit about the timing right now and what's going on, and I think this is interesting to talk about, because we've heard the term Summer of Splinterlands been discussed. Certainly in the community here, but we're in the middle of August, and summer's coming to a little bit of a close. But I think right now there's just so much on the horizon, like the short-term horizon, like literally weeks and days away, that could really change things. So to put it in perspective, if you remember, just maybe like it's probably been 2.5 to 3 weeks ago, we were sitting at like 4.5, 5 cents, right, from an SPS perspective. And just this last week, we're above 8 cents. So just with the Genesis Sports League and Genesis League Soccer announcement, we almost 2x'd SPS prices. And if you look at what's around, just right around the corner here for SPS and the game in general, I mean, do you think it's possible that we 2x again in the next 2 weeks potentially? I mean, not obviously not financial advice and not a price prediction, but is it, not out of the question that we see that kind of movement based on the stuff that we have right around the corner?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I have to, the way I think about it is it's like, it's not necessarily that it's going to happen, but it's more like I think about it from the perspective of, if I believe, like, could it happen? And does that likelihood represent a significant enough probability in my mind that I then need to put my chips on in like, do I feel pot committed in it, like, for poker terminology? And at some points you just feel like your hand is strong enough and you just push, and it's like, and I feel at this moment with this set of events and this set of news things also, like, looking, we talked before we went live about how Ethereum's kind of been making a run, and even Bitcoin has been making a run, and it was down around 19 or something, and it's around 25 now, and Ethereum is, I think, pushing even harder lately, and I think those are potentially kind of market signs, plus Rift Watchers, plus SPS no longer being airdropped, plus, and it's like, to me, I don't know that it's going to pump to, say, double its current price, but I feel that that probability is substantially, how do I say that? Like, it's a significant probability. Now, does that mean it's like a 51% chance that it's going to happen? I don't really, I don't know, I don't feel confident saying something like that, but I do feel personally convicted enough that, like, I just sold my kitty for 3,200 US dollars. 5% goes to the market. I get 3 grand. I spent about $600 on cards and different in-game assets, and then I spent 2,300 bucks on SPS. And I'm just sitting on that SPS because I feel that confident, and I never do this, but, like, I'm actually looking for a short-term trade on SPS. I'm actually thinking that the set of events around me right now justifies that sort of push in move, that sort of like, I feel this is a good enough bet that I'm actually risking that. And so now it could go down, but I actually think 15 cents is more likely than, say, 4 cents again. That's where my head is at. I wonder if I said anything there that kind of you think about. I'd love to hear more thoughts from you, your perspective about that, Tails.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm in the same boat. I think it's probably a higher probability that we see 14, 15 cents rather than 3 cents, 4 cents. Again, who knows? The market could crash this weekend, and then if Bitcoin goes down to like 17 again, then, well, we're probably looking at that again. But so you never know. But what I will say, that we have a lot of tailwinds helping us right now, and you mentioned a few of them. We've got the Rift Watchers sale coming up. We've got the Genesis League Soccer airdrop coming up. And I made a video talking about some of these tailwinds that are pushing us forward in a video when I talked about, the days of cheap SPS are numbered, I think was the title of the video, because I really think there's a lot of influencing factors that are coming into play very shortly, those being some of them, but there's others that we don't necessarily see or realize until they're maybe upon us. We talked a little bit earlier today, for example, about this data, right? We've got reward cards, common reward cards at 72% print rates, right? And what happens when this hits 80% or 85%? What happens to the reward card prices? Do we start getting some FOMO in there, and do we start to see people, these 1 cent common cards? Is that no longer the case? And at the same time, if we look at the Chaos Legion packs, we're almost at 9.6 million, I think, packs sold. What happens when we get to 10 million Chaos Legion packs sold? Where is it when FOMO for Chaos Legion kicks in? Is it 10 million? Is it 12 million? What is that switch where people say, hey, I need to, back up the truck and get what I can now because I'm not going to be able to get it in the future? And these things are all kind of happening around the same time, as you mentioned, kind of this Ethereum merge where Ethereum's seeing, a little bit of some excitement here. Could this be alt season coming up with, if Bitcoin trends sideways, could we see some explosive action in the crypto market alongside all this great news for Splinterlands? And if that's true, it could be some very big things. And that's exciting to me. I think we've kind of been taking a few punches here so far this year. With timing, maybe one time we get the timing that aligns right for us, just like the Untamed and SPS airdrop. Maybe that happens again here this Q3.
Yeah. There. Sometimes I have to. I had a conversation the other day, and I tried to summarize this like in the last 5 minutes of my stream last night on Splinterlands TV. It was a great conversation with a friend of mine on Discord, and I was talking about SPS and the probability of it reaching kind of say 15 or even 50 cents, because I think that's a possible reality in the near future. And we've articulated, you have, and I think I have a little bit here, some of the reasons why, but there are even more that we haven't fully kind of touched on. But then the what my mind says, and I shared this with my friend Matt, I was like, but I say to, when I go through this sort of back and forth, pro and con, weighing out and thinking through the probabilities of that sort of outcome, like a massive pump to SPS versus maybe it not, or even it falling back. What I like to do is I like to think through all the fundamental considerations as best I can, but then I have to take a step back and say to myself, okay, I love this game. I'm deeply invested in this game. I have a ton of SPS. Am I just being a fanboy in this moment? And like, is some of this stuff that I'm heralding as really significant, is it white noise to the broader cryptocurrency community? And I don't think that, guys. I don't believe that. But I have to actually step back and ask myself if I'm behaving in that kind of fanboy way, where if I'm letting realism shine into the conversation, because I don't care about I don't care about having made the right decision yesterday. I want to make the right decision today and tomorrow. So like if I made a mistake, either by, for instance, acquiring too much SPS, I don't then want to just kind of sit in that boat and, oh well, I made that mistake, now let's lie in it. I want to like understand, I want to evolve, I want to learn, I want to improve, and I want to iterate and change. And so again, I don't think I'm wrong about the fundamental considerations. I do think SPS is poised to go probably at least double, and I could see 50 cents, like 20 to 50 cents would not at all surprise me. But yeah, I mean, that's a real consideration. The last couple of weeks I've been saying to myself, because I still don't feel that Bitcoin is done. I think it's going to go up to like 40 something, and people have been saying for like weeks that that's totally not going to happen. It's over. And then recently I feel like there's a possibility in like a certain, so I'm always asking myself, am I barking up the wrong tree? But with SPS, I really feel this time it's like I really think it is going to pump. So hopefully I'm not just being a fanboy, and that's just something I think that needs to be said, so that people out there are like, they aren't just, yeah, it's like a grain of salt comment, right? Like take everything, because I love this game, take everything I say about it with a grain of salt, I guess is what I'm driving at.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to have too much, as After Sound would say, hopium, right? You don't want to get lost in the echo chamber. But at the same time,
Yeah.
I think if you're realistic and you were to take out a napkin right now and divide it in half and list the positive things that SPS has going for it today or in the near future, and some of the negative things, I think the list would probably be weighted on one side more than the other right now.
Mhm.
One thing that we didn't talk about as well was into the SPS airdrop as another catalyst, again, that it's not seen because it's gone, right? We don't see it. We don't feel it necessarily on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do, at least from my side. So for me, I was getting advantages of the SPS airdrop, not a ton, because I'm, a newer player to the game, so I didn't have a ton of assets that was dropping me SPS, but I was getting some SPS airdropped, every day. And I can tell you now, even though I put a significant, I would say from my perspective, a significant amount into the liquidity pools right now to take advantage of those LP rewards, even still, even though that I've increased my allocations there, active allocations, I'm still getting less than half of the SPS airdrop I got before for doing nothing. And I've got to think that that supply is going to be felt sooner than later, just because, when you've essentially, maybe it's not half, but maybe you've cut it by a third, the amount of SPS being brought into the ecosystem through LP rewards now,
Yep.
and then you turn on things like Rift Watchers, which is going to increase SPS demand. And you have things like a new token airdrop that's going to require staked SPS. These are things that increase the demand of a token. And when you have a decrease in the supply of a token, I mean, the market's going to do what the market does. And I think sooner than later, we'll start to see some of that equalization is another thing I think that, it's not always recognized, at least right now.
Yeah, that brings up a conversation that I'd love to hear your thoughts on around I forget what it's called, but the soccer airdrop token that we're going to get for having SPS. I'm a bit more skeptical on that token. Not to say I'm skeptical on that game, but only just because new tokens, airdrop tokens, they usually take a time to, like, they're dropped or they're shared or whatever, they're dispersed in some way, and then there's probably some exuberance at the gate, but then there's look what happened with SPS. Like, it was a dollar for a couple of days, and then we've slowly bled out, and now I do think maybe we found the bottom and we're about to do a little, like, a nice bounce, but that took a year, and maybe something, I don't know. I guess I'm skeptical about the immediate short-term value proposition or opportunity for the tokens that we're going to be airdropped. And first, do you agree with that? And second, if you agree that value of that token is not going to be maybe super high, how do you work that into your understanding of where SPS is at price wise? Because some amount of this SPS pump would presumably be exuberance to see this new token be airdropped for free, don't you think? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. What I would say is, well, 2 points that I'll add to that is, one is for the GLS token, obviously there'll be sell pressure when that comes out because people are getting it airdropped, and we'll see the white paper with details on what that's going to look like moving forward. But when I look at that new token long term, I'm very optimistic on it, and here's why. So I think it's Team One, or I forget the exact organization that Splinterlands partnered with for the MLSPA representation here to get this game kicked off. But the core competency that Splinterlands has, and what they're demonstrating with, Hardpoint coming in and talking about the tech modernization, is they're basically creating, essentially, I guess you would call it, it's not platform as a service or crypto as a service, but it's maybe like, it could be like maybe play and earn platform as a service, something like that. Yeah. Basically, it's basically the ability for Splinterlands to take its competitive advantage and solutions like rentals in the game, which, how many games have a working rental system for NFT assets, right? That's a huge benefit to this game. You've got the card market, the non-card market coming shortly. You've got, take the Splinterlands pieces out of the game and just look at the framework built around Splinterlands. It's something that you can drop into Warner Music, you can drop into, Genesis League Soccer, and it's something that's very powerful, right? Because if I'm a company that's even eyeing or thinking about getting into this space, does it make sense for me to hire and staff a bunch of people and try and create this from scratch? Or does it make sense to partner with someone that is best in class and can onboard it and get it to me in, like, literally weeks or months rather than years? Yeah. And that's powerful. And if you look at what, Splinterlands has done with, I think it's, again, I don't recall exactly, it's team one or one team, I forget what it is exactly, but they also control the rights to NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL, etc. And it's smart from their side as well, because you can kind of see the writing on the wall. It's kind of like, hey, take maybe our least popular, or one of our not as valuable assets in our portfolio, Splinterlands, go do something with this. And
Yeah.
if it works, if it comes up quickly, if it is successful, if it meets the business objectives of the players, because remember, the proceeds of some of this is going to the ultimately the players, and those
Yeah.
players obviously have relationships on the golf course or just professionally or with agents with other organizations, right? Once the word gets out, if Splinterlands does this right, it can easily overnight multiply to NFL, to
Yeah.
Major League Baseball, to NHL, and look at some of the valuations there, right? Look at DraftKings or like a FanDuel or something like that, and imagine fantasy sports on the blockchain with a blockchain favor, what that could look like. So again, from that perspective, the GLS token is the center of all of that. Whether you're MLSPA, whether you're NFL, MLB, NHL, etc. So the ability to have it all under one umbrella for me as a token, and if I'm getting that for free, and that could potentially be something huge in the future, well, I'm all in. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
that's just icing on the cake of the Splinterlands dessert here, right? So, yeah, I mean, what they're trying to do from an ecosystem perspective is a great vision. And remember, we're in a bear market right now, and Splinterlands is taking some serious haymakers here, and some shots here in a bear market, that if they pull it off, can you imagine what happens in the upcoming bull market? And that's
Yeah.
where for me, I'm like, hey, SPS is driving all of this. At the core of what Matt and Nagy want to do is it's bring value to those who were here from the beginning, who believe in SPS, and they've shown time and time again that's what they're going to do. So for me, it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. The what we're building now in this moment is like deeply promising for the future of like where we're aiming. And it strikes me as almost irrelevant. Like maybe this is easy to say for me because my cards and my value here is largely appreciated in a significant way already. But I really am at the point where, and but here's the thing, I think I've always been, when I play this game, I've always been in the mindset of, I don't care what happens in the short term financially with this, but I know where it's going in the long term. That I think I'm being totally genuine when I say that. Even 3.5 years ago, when I was putting in $5,000, it was literally all my financial investment, like all of it. I didn't have any savings elsewhere. I had put it all into crypto, and most of it had deflated because of the bear market. And then I was like, well, Splinterlands looks amazing. This game's fun. I like it, and I could see where this is going. And and I was never like, but that means it needs it needs to pay in the next few weeks or days or months. It was always like in 4 years or 5 years, when the next significant bull market rolls through, I expect good things at that moment. And again, just like you just said, it's like we're building something now that is going to be significant, not just because of everything we've talked about with SPS, not just because of this soccer game, but because of the SDK development kit that's going to allow that to proliferate across different sports. Like you said, the licensing with every other type of sport, and the music. I don't really know what they're going to do with the music. That's interesting to me. I haven't really been able to imagine what that's going to look like, but I can imagine what like hockey would look like, or basketball, or baseball. It seems very appropriate for this sort of game style to me. So I think it's going to work. I don't. That doesn't mean I'm bullish in the short term around that token we're going to get airdropped. I suspect massive price depreciation on that token, because that's what happens. Like you said, weak hands, they get it for free and they're like, yeah, sell it. Um, but I am bullish long term on that game, on that token, and I don't think I'll sell it. But I don't really know yet, so I guess I'll defer my answer on that one.
Yep, indeed. I mean, we'll have to see as we get more details on the white paper. There's a lot of unknowns here, right? We haven't
Yeah.
even seen the game, but I think it goes back to a question of perspective. And let me just ask this hypothetical question, Dwayne, because it came to my mind as you were just talking there. Is
Mm.
if you take yourself back in time in a time machine, let's say 3 years ago, roughly, like when you were starting your Splinterlands journey, if
Mhm.
you were if the future Dwayne were to come to you and say, hey, 3 years from now, all your Splinterlands assets will be worth the same. But Splinterlands, the company, will have partnerships with essentially blue chip companies like Warner Music and MLSPA or Major League Soccer. What would that mean to you 3 years ago if you heard that? Because I don't think
Mm.
people really realize what's happening here in some of these
Yeah.
partnerships.
Yeah, that's a great question. So almost the question sounds to me like it's like how trying to put myself in that mindset of still being new to this, and how meaningful are these partnerships, or would they have been to me in that early stages. I would i would say that that's significant, and I guess I would point to, even before I would go to the partnership, I would just point to the fact that this game has thrived. To me, like, one of the main cornerstones to anyone who is new, and is should be the fact that it proved, Splinterlands has proved its resilience through one bear market already, and that should, in and of itself, I would argue, really breed a sense of confidence with where it's going in the future. And if you agree to that premise, then that alone should empower us to step confidently into this moment within Splinterlands. Whether that means investing your money by buying cards or packs or whatever, or just your time and attention, because your time and attention can and will add up in a meaningful way, even though it seems trivial on a daily basis. To me, that's like the one. Like, yes, the partnerships are amazing. It's so cool to see that sort of growth. That's indicative of our game being more and more and more respected, and that is a piece of the puzzle where a new person should say this game is for real, and this opportunity is really serious. But even before that, I feel the foundation is we survived a bear market, and we've grown and grown and grown, and the team is there's just so many positives to where what we've come out of, and now where we are, 1 or 2 or 3 thousand daily players now. I think even by skeptical review, and maybe you could comment on this, Tails, better than I can, but we must have, even by like the most skeptical analysis, wouldn't you say we have tens of thousands of real players? Now, maybe that's multiple accounts, but do you think that's fair, or what number would you put at it for how many actual people are playing Splinterlands?
Yeah, I haven't gone through the recent data necessarily, but I would say it's fair to say that at a low number, we probably have somewhere between 20 to 40,000 real human players playing the game at a very, very ultra conservative number.
Yeah, and I think just that, to compare that from where I used to play this game when there was 1 to 3 thousand daily active accounts, and those could have been alt accounts, because guess what? I had 2 or 3 accounts back then too, and like, it was literally a handful of people taking this game seriously, and now it's tens of thousands of people, and lots and lots of money has been spent in this thing. Millions of dollars has been spent on Chaos Legion packs. Millions more will be spent on Rift Watchers. This game is for real, and we've come through so much. I hope people are paying attention to what this is, and if they are, I think there's life changing opportunity here.
Yeah, and I think that's indicative of kind of where Splinterlands TV is at. Like if we look right now, we've got maybe like 50 viewers on Splinterlands TV, the official channel here. And if you go to like a game like Hearthstone or anything else out there, I mean, they're going to have thousands of viewers. So that just shows you how much growth potential is out there just in our niche market, not even talking about players that'll come in with Genesis League Sports or, with casino games or a tower defense game or anything like that. So Like you mentioned, let's say went from 3,000 players to 30,000 players, which is what is that? That's a 10x, right? We could easily do another 10x from 30,000 to 300,000, and imagine what that would do to the Splinterlands economy. So
I know.
I think it's definitely more likely that we see that happen than us going back to 3,000 users, right?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that it's not just about the players either. Some people get kind of caught up on the other side of the coin, is that like there are a lot of accounts that are either duplicates or that are being run by bots, and people will hold it up as like a wholly critical thing, and they say it with like disdains, which is, I get, like, I understand the heart of where that's coming from, but there are what I see, the silver lining that I see to the presence of that, is that there is real earning potential here, and they see it, and they are trying to exploit it, and that's something we need to be cognizant of, and we need to be practical about, and Splinterlands team needs to be thorough in responding to. I personally believe they have made efforts to curtail those sorts of exploits, and we could talk about ghost card nerfs. We could talk about the recent ECR change, how at 50% every game burns 5% of your ECR, which should really stop those bots from just playing. And there's lots of other things too. And so it seems to me like, one, this game pays; two, people with big investment dollars and vision for business development are recognizing that. And I think those are good things, even if at times they have been kind of adopted by the wrong audience. I think we're correcting, and we're heading in the right direction. And I think, oh man, I'm so excited about the growth we've seen, and I'm so hopeful for the future growth that's coming.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback on that, because I think that's a valid point here. Is because if you look at the decisions that the team has made, they've tackled some tough topics, and I've been 100% transparent on my stance on each of those topics that have been controversial, and I don't pull any punches necessarily. I just give my opinion on it, and I can honestly say that what Matt and the team has done has been positive. And it's they've made changes. They've I think improved the game experience for players at all ends of the spectrum that play the game, and they've worked to address problems in the ecosystem. And for me, going back to your comments around the bear market and how Splinterlands has survived it, well, it's because they've made good decisions, and they continue to, in my opinion, make good decisions. And we've got coming up SPS ranked rewards, which is going to change how players earn in Splinterlands. We've got changes around DEC and what that's going to do in the ecosystem. We've got just a ton of things that keep coming down the road here that are ultimately moving us into a better position longer term. And again, there's nothing that I'm seeing that's like a flashing warning sign saying, hey, this is a problem or this is a step backwards. I really think they're making steps forward, not only in just adjusting and tweaking things that are good for the game's economy as a whole and the player experience as a whole, but they're also putting that into play at the same time. They're making pretty drastic game mode changes and other things that are bringing more excitement and playability to the game. So all those things put together, I think are definitely very net positive aspects. Mm-hmm. And I want to maybe touch upon a question that Elephantium posed in the chat, and maybe you can comment on your take on this, Dwayne. What Elephantium had said was, when the next bull market comes in crypto, play to earn will not necessarily be a big thing. The bull market will still be good, but might not nearly be as good as it was this time around when it was super hot. What is your opinion on that? Do you think that play and earn gaming has reached its peak and it's never going to get bigger than what it is today? Is Splinterlands right now the peak of play and earn gaming, or are we at a different opinion there. What's your take on that?
So, is play to earn gaming kind of at a peak, and will the next bull run not necessarily translate into a significant kind of growth from where we're at? Is that the question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I think that, in my opinion, well, I felt for 4 years that blockchain and what it brings to gaming is revolutionary, and in my opinion, that is it's going to transform not just blockchain gaming, but all gaming forever. Like I really believe that. I think what we're doing here can and should impact all gaming everywhere. And I say that because, to me, like, I've loved games all my whole life. Like, I've played all kinds of games, ever since I was a kid, and it just strikes me that, um, pretty much every game I like, there's a thing I'm earning in that game. I play a lot of RPGs, role playing games. In action RPGs are great. Um, I like games like Fallout. I like games like Diablo. These games where I'm spending literally dozens or even hundreds of hours. Call of Duty's another one. You get nothing for it. And I was having a conversation with, I forget who, but recently we're talking about how traditional gaming is play for fun, but this is like a play to earn, and that is unlocked by that blockchain technology and the non-fungible tokens that can be handed out for free by the game, so long as they have artists to render these things, and then it's yours, and it's just like an in-game. It kind of doesn't even matter to them if it ends up being valuable, but it does matter to them, the game developer, because it attracts us. There's a certain audience of people that will be brought to a game strictly for that opportunity to earn. And I can show you real world examples besides Splinterlands. Like, Diablo 3 had a real world market where you could sell assets. You could find an axe and go sell it on the market, or you could buy an axe on the market at a certain hour of day, and then arbitrage that and flip it later on the same day, or days later, for real world money. Like, it turned into gold, and that gold could be used for real world value. And people would earn hundreds or thousands of dollars until they eventually killed that market, because they didn't want. I don't know why they did that, but they didn't want that. And it's like Blizzard didn't get what they had there. And in my mind, this is the secret sauce, and this is what's special. And so when I answer the question, like, is the next Bloodline going to be similar, or maybe is this just kind of a unique moment? I think it all comes down to whether or not I'm right about the fact that blockchain brings something special, like a revolutionary aspect to gaming, and that non-fungible token component of a game reward, and how you literally own that and then can rent or sell or use that aspect blends perfectly with gaming and improves gaming if it's used properly. So I do believe next time is going to be even better, and I think this game is literally going to retire me financially, and that's my view, because of that premise, that it adds something very powerful to gaming broadly, and that therefore more and more and more games will come, and therefore more and more and more audience will recognize the power of Splinterlands as this grows in, I guess, acceptability.
Yep. No, I also agree with that, and I think I think Elephantium's question is obviously a valid one, and there's obviously going to be difference of opinions there. I think we're also at just the beginning here of play and earn gaming, and I think Splinterlands is uniquely positioned to be successful here for some of the reasons I talked about earlier with their platform.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Just coughing there. But the reason why I say that is because if you look at opportunities in just markets and innovation, if you look at like Microsoft Windows when it came out, I mean it's was it the greatest thing since sliced bread? No, but it was what was needed for the time, right? And if you look at these other games out there in the play and earn space, like take a look at some of them, like a Star Atlas or even a Mirandus or some of those other games, if you look at what the developers are working on, they have grand visions of how to take, currently like I wouldn't call it Web 2 gaming, but I mean just current existing gaming models and bring those to the blockchain. But in doing so, they're literally probably years off. Like what they're talking about now for these games are like, how do we, store quiver, how many, quivers or how many arrows in your quiver in Miranda's, was on a town hall earlier today. They're just talking very basic concepts of basically how, the fundamentals of the game works, let alone how to deliver the game, which is, likely a ways off in the future. So first movers who come to the space like Splinterlands, who can build the IP and the competitive advantage and the functionality on the blockchain, while yes, we may not have the smoothest looking graphics today, we can add to that if we have if the bones and the structure that we're building upon are sound. And for me, if we're at the beginning of this and Splinterlands is making the right investments now, I think that puts us in a great position to be, in good shape. Like I said, if Splinterlands retires you, it's probably not going to be necessarily all that surprising. But let's see. Let's knock on wood, and hopefully that comes to pass. But I think it is the beginning, and I think we are definitely in a good spot, all things considered, right?
Yeah, and it's super important that each of us wrestle with that question and that conversation. It's really important that that question was asked, because it points to a thoughtfulness in the questioner about what they're doing. It's like there is totally room for skepticism. In fact, I consider myself like skeptic first in everything, whether it's my investment strategy or even my religion. It's like I step forward in everything I do. I try and think skeptically, well, this sounds kind of like too good to be true. And, what do you mean I can change my life financially by playing a video game? And it's like, but this is a what's the word? It's a testable hypothesis. And you can for relatively little investment, you can actually test that hypothesis, and you can explore the fundamental considerations that you and I are discussing here tonight, whether it's SPS and kind of the nuance of what we talked about around why it could appreciate. All of that is like, probably we could spend hours really deep diving in just SPS, or just the tweaks to rank rewards recently, or modern versus wild and what that does. Like there's just so many elements here that we really, if we were properly going to explore all the pros and cons and nuance of each of these topics, it would take a long time. So it takes the certain, like a questioner of that type that asked the question, I forget who, Elephantium you said it was, that's great, because you really want to bring skepticism to these conversations so that you are thinking straight on these issues. And if you ever feel that Tails or myself or anybody in this space has got it wrong, I don't think I know anybody who doesn't want to see that. Like if we get it wrong, I personally want to know. So I think I'm right about these things. I really do believe what I'm saying. But if I'm wrong and there's some sort of fundamental consideration I'm missing, that sort of skepticism is why and how we would identify that.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, no one has a crystal ball. No one's going to get it right all the time. But I think as long as what's great about our community is we're very active, and I think we're staying on top of things. And as things change and as we get more information, obviously, we'll continue to adjust our points of view and obviously try and inform our audiences as best we can. So.
Hey, I'm looking at my main account right now, and I see my Legionnaire title, and you did the video talking about the different titles. What was the response to that? And I'd love to know more about which titles you got. Are you aiming at getting more of them? Are you thinking that there's going to be like NFT? Like, do you think that they'll have some sort of like impact? I think you talked about land. It might impact land, and also you said you wanted me to talk about land, so maybe that's an opportunity to move in there if we touch on the titles first.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great segue. And I did do a video talking about My opportunity, I had some opportunity to look at getting some titles because, well, right now they're not valuable. They're not really worth anything per se. But the way I look at it again is it's a long-term investment where I think now is the right time to look at assets like that that are kind of down and not really being talked about, and could definitely provide some growth, over time. And for me, I made I guess a conscious choice recently to, bite off a tract of land. So that kind of influenced my decision. Excuse me, influenced my decision to look at titles because what had been alluded to in the original land reveal is that things like titles would add some kind of benefit to landholders. Now, obviously, if you have a title and you have one plot of land, it's probably not going to be super useful. But if you maybe have 100 plots of land, maybe you get some exponential benefits from that. And if you have a region, obviously, even more so. But then what intrigued me was, when Splinterfest was announced, they announced that there'll be a title given away for those that attend Splinterfest. And that got me thinking in my mind, hey, why would they introduce titles if the SPS airdrop is over and there's really no function for titles in the game moving forward? It just is, basically flair around your name, like, it's not a big deal. And again, it brought me back to what, Matt and Aggro continue to do with the game, and it's continued to bring value to those that invest in the game and believe in the game. Yeah. And what better way to reinforce titles as being something that they're going to continue to support by offering one at Splinterfest, right? The first event gathering for the biggest Splinterlands fans. So for me, that was kind of like, that pushed me over the edge to say, hey, titles are not going away. They will find a way to add value. Maybe it's as part of GLS airdrops. Maybe it's part of land. In some form or fashion, they're going to look to provide or reward those that have, trusted Splinterlands. And for me, what I said is, well, like right now, if you have a title, you can only activate one in the game. But what happens if the titles stack? Like what happens if, for example, I have on my account 2 titles or 3 titles or 10 titles? And again, if I have a tract of land and each one of those titles gives me a boost to all of my plots of land and it stacks, like let's say it gives me 5% productive bonus for an explorer title or 2% for, an untamed title, whatever it happens to be. If all of a sudden I have multiple titles and that stacks and I have 100 plots of land, then all of a sudden, well, now I'm getting, maybe 30, 40, 50% production increase. And how do you quantify the value of that? And then when I look at the problems with titles being that they're not easily bought or sold, there's no general market price or history, and no one really necessarily wants to hold them right now. Well, maybe now's a good time to look at picking some up if people want to offload them because, well, they want to put it in SPS or something else, which is perfectly viable, right? So that's the reason why I created that video. Also, I think the non-card market coming online and making titles tradable and sellable and stuff will also add visibility and maybe create more marketability and value for titles moving forward. So all those factors combined said, hey, let's take a risk. Let's do a speculative buy. Maybe they're not worth anything in the future, and I just wasted some money. But for me, I decided to make that change and allocate some assets there.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting observation that they are giving us a title at the Splinterfest, and there's no foreseeable or perceivable, justification for that because the SPS airdrop is done. And I guess you might say like, well, maybe they'll represent bonuses on maybe the soccer token or something. I don't know. Like maybe they'll find other ways to benefit us with it. But even if that's all it is, I would argue that might justify your decision. And so I think it's a real cool, innovative way to think through what's out there. I did that a while back, not with titles, but with um, skins. You know,
Hmm.
in the shop, you could buy the alternative skins for the various cards and for the betas. And like I went through and I mean, at first I was like, why would I care about skins? Like it's just a card. But then somebody DM'd me in Discord, and this is kind of part of this is a comment on how powerful the community can be. But then we had the airdrop going on, and these skins were getting airdrop points, and the points would pay for the skins if you at a certain moment in the history of the SPS airdrop. So I just went out and bought them because of that alone. And then who knows? We've heard Nate talk a variety of times about how the NFTs that they create around Splinterlands might have some sort of in-game utility at one point. They can't promise that, but he would like it if that was possible. And so it just seems wise to me that if there's an asset being slept on that's related to Splinterlands, it seems wise to me to be thoughtful, at minimum thoughtful around like what it would entail to acquire. um, because I mean at one point land was $15 a plot, and I mean, you know, at one point like some of the best cards in this game were a penny or a half a penny. And it just seems to me that like every time we haven't maybe believed financially in the thing that they're doing, they just blow us out of the water. So I'm done doubting it, and I'm just kind of like I hear you. I haven't bought any other titles, but I mean I kind of think what you're predicting there might make some sense, even if that's not exactly what it ends up looking like, because they are thoughtful about honoring old investments, and those titles represent old investments. Um, and so I don't know, man. That's kind of cool. I like that you did that.
Yeah, and I wanted to share it with the community as I was doing it in real time because, again, like your video was helpful for me when you talk about the skins, and I actually had it on my radar. And at the time, I wanted to just buy all I think it was the common skins, and I had I was like, oh, I'm going to go buy those. There's still plenty left, and but I wanted to use the DEC to buy some cards at the time of the video, and then DEC was still getting airdrop points, and then what happened is DEC dropped. We went below peg, and I think we're at like, I don't know, six or seven or whatever from a peg perspective. And then I remembered one day, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to go and buy skins. I totally forgot. I've got this DEC, and now it's a good value to go in here, even if that SPS airdrop is basically over. I still want the skins just because I want them, not because they had any value, but because they look cool, right? I just wanted them because they were a cool part of the game. I wasn't looking to get any value out of it. And I went in there and they're all sold out. I mean, they weren't all sold out. Like I could buy individual ones, but I couldn't buy the entire like common set or the rare set because those were sold out. So I could just pick and choose the individual ones. And I was like, oh, I think I missed it by like a day. It's just one of those things where, timely video content is, sometimes what you need just to say, hey, maybe I should think about this. Maybe it's something I look at. Again, maybe not for everyone, but if it's helpful for someone and it ultimately benefits them, then it was good and worth it in the end. And I think it's a good segue again to the land conversation, because I did have some data that I think is going to be interesting for us to discuss today. And I just put it together just really quickly before the stream, and I want to share it. Let me pull up this screenshot here. So this is some data I was going through when we were talking about land, and I thought this will be interesting because I think you still hold a decent amount of land as well, right, Dwayne? I know you broke your.
I might have like 20 plots. I forget how many, but I've got about 15 or 20 plots.
Okay. So this will be interesting to look at as well from your perspective, I think, as a landowner, because, I basically got two sections here. I've got a scenario A and a scenario B outlined. Now, we don't know specifically the details of how monsters will work on land and how they'll, basically produce stuff on land. There's been one talk that a summoner and 3 monsters might be used. Another scenario was a summoner and 6 monsters, like a team, would be used. So I drew up scenarios with both of those possibilities in mind. And I specifically want to call out some of the data in the yellow boxes. And, basically these columns are if you have 1 plot of land, 10 plots of land, or if you have a tract of land as examples, 1, 10, and 100, just show the scaling. And if you look at this scenario A, if you were to say that for every plot of land you owned, you'd want to have a max level summoner and max level monsters. What it means is your investment for 1 plot of land, in addition to the plot of land itself, is about $140 today based on current pricing for the lowest max level summoner, which is General Sloan, and the lowest max level monster, which is roughly about 952 CP for dollars, like a common reward or a rare reward card, right? So that's kind of the data. But then when you extrapolate that to attractive land, what is interesting, if you want attractive land, if you want to have max summoners on that attractive land and you just use General Sloan as the lowest price worker you can get, the investment cost here is a little eye-opening, right? $13,000 is what it would cost you if you want it. Well, obviously it'd be more than that because you started buying Sloans like that, the market would adjust. But let's just say $13,000 to buy 100 max level Sloans. That's a significant investment as a tract owner. And remember, there are people out there that own regions and multiple regions, which is 1,000 or 2,000 plots of land. So you can imagine what that would mean for them. And then if you extrapolate it into this model here with 6 monsters per land, you can see some of the data. The summoner stays the same, obviously at 13,000, but then the 6 monsters, if you just use rare reward cards, would be another $1,500 to basically staff that tract of land as an example. But what was interesting to me was when I went through the data, the amount of BCX that would be taken off the market essentially that wouldn't be used in the game and couldn't be bought or sold because they were stuck on land, working land, right? So it would be 69,000 rare Chaos Legion reward cards as an example, or 240,000 common cards would be instantly gone off the market if a owner of attractive land maxed out his production using scenario B. And this was interesting because when you do the math, when you look at that, there's 1,500 tracts of land available, so 150,000 plots, and you look at the print rates of, for example, here a common Heatsmith or an Exploding Rat on the rare side. It means that if just the land itself could consume 51 total prints of rare cards, like an Exploding Rat, an Venari Seedsmith, etc., 51 of those types of cards, their entire print rate for reward cards gone, just from land workers alone. And for common cards, it would be 45 of those. So
help me, hang on 1 second. You're saying based on the projected perceived number of cards required per plot, and I've heard these numbers too, like 1 summoner 6 monsters or 1 summoner 3 monsters, and you're saying if it's 6 monsters, you're saying that it could use up 51% of rare cards?
No, even worse than that. What I'm saying is, if you take a Venari a Venari for rare cards, so Venari or Exploding Rats, right?
Right. Yeah.
It means that 1 Exploding Rat, all 2 million printed of him.
Yeah.
Take that times 51 cards, like 51 Exploding Rat cards, like an Exploding Rat, Venari Seedsmith,
wow.
Venari Wavesmith, Venari Crystalsmith. 51 unique cards, their entire print rate, if they were printed at the rate of Chaos Legion reward cards, would be consumed by land if land was maxed out. So remember, in the current Chaos Legion reward prints, there's only 5 rares? I forget how many rares. There's like a neutral, a dragon, and all the sponges, right? So what is that, 7 rares? What I'm saying is there's 44 other rares in complete entire print runs that would be consumed by land as a max scenario, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because a lot of people say, hey, we overprinted Chaos Legion reward cards, we overprinted Chaos Legion cards. Well, land in and of itself could actually reverse that scenario and put it on its head very quickly, right? And
Wow.
yeah, and it's
There's four rare cards for each of the Chaos Legion. Um, from fire to like fire, water, earth, life, and death, and then dragon has 0 rares, and then neutral has 3 rares. So that would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. There's 23 rares from Chaos Legion, and you're saying 51
mhm.
rares would be kind of exhausted, but if the land was fully farmed, is that correct?
Yep, that is correct. And this kind of leads to my next slide, which I'll talk about in a second. But just I mean, think about that. I mean, that's taking, and that's basically saying these cards aren't going to be used in battles, aren't going to be used in brawls, aren't going to be used in tournaments because they're just farming land. And obviously, this is a kind of a linear, simple comparison because not everyone's just going to take all the seedsmiths and put them on land, right? They'll probably have to take some other cards here and there, and there'll be epics and gold foils and other stuff used. But if you want to maximize for the cheapest right now in the market, this is what it looks like, and that's there's just not enough, right? Like
Wow.
Aggie says, there's just not enough of everything. So
Maybe that's why they're making Rift Watchers is actually a large. I forget the exact number of cards, but Rift Watchers is, if for a mini set, is actually really significant in how many cards it has. I forget how many it has, but they I think it might have been like 90 or something, and or maybe it was even over 100. And I almost can't finish my thought because I actually need to know that number before I really articulate what I'm trying to say. But I believe it boils down to I actually have heard and I have the sense that Rift Watchers is going to be larger than, for instance, Dice was, because you might say they should be comparable, but in terms of the number of cards, I actually believe Rift Watchers is going to be really significant. And maybe it's in part because they know what you're saying.
yeah, in Unreal, Chris J says there's 43 cards in Rift Watchers is what's I think been communicated.
Okay.
And yeah, it's
Okay.
3 million packs, 5 cards for packs. That's 15 million cards divided by 43 cards, basically at the different drop rates.
Okay. 43, and there's like 6 splinters, so you're talking like 8-ish, like five-ish cards per splinter. Okay, so it is smaller than I. Okay, so there you go. Unreal says 25 for dice, and then 43 for Rift Watcher. So it is, practically double. And in part, that's probably some thoughtfulness around what you're describing, I imagine, because they know what they're going to do with land, or they have a good idea, and they're thinking these exact same things that you're raising. But this is this almost ties into, and I don't want to derail, but Cimarron dropped a comment that was interesting and perhaps related. He says if he talks about how um, honoring old investments is good and all, but at some point there needs to be a break between old players, or I guess only, he says only players, but only players who were here 1 or 3 years getting a boost. It will turn off new players when they have no way to earn new the same as old players. I don't agree, but I would say just quickly, I think all new players become old players, and so new players should want this game to honor old players because you will be an old player when you've been here for a few years, and that's great for the investments you're making now because it means it's a firm foundation. But the reason I think it's important here is because this what you're talking about, and this is really shocking, Tails. Like these numbers are very surprising, but this could be one of the ways that new players begin now to understand how, for instance, you called out General Sloan, $113. He is, or sorry, 131. He is like the laughing stock of all summoners, really. Like in terms of cost, he is dirt cheap, and his win percentage is quite low, especially at the highest levels. But then along comes something like this, and so guys who are new, maybe they have Sloans because that's all they can afford, and they want a summoner for their white team. Well, this is a new moment, a new thing that could be creating new desirability and selling pressure, like buying pressure for you as a seller to then take advantage of, where you are being quote unquote honored. And I think it's not a direct comparison because alphas and betas get sort of like 5 or 10% bonuses on wins. And so this is different, but it's like this is one more way. Splinterlands is always trying to create desirability for the assets they're handing out and for the assets you're buying. And whether you bought it 4 years ago or whether you're buying 4 days ago, they are trying to build value into those cards. And this is totally part of that.
Yep, absolutely. It's that track record of trust. I think that the team is built in is whether you're a player that's played for 3 years or 1 year or 1 day, what they're trying to say is, hey, if you trust us and our vision, you will be rewarded based on the game mechanics and the systems that we put into the game. And that's what you want to see, right? You don't want them to take away value from those that have invested, but you also want to see them continue to add value through those coming to the game. And I think they're balancing both of those, which is great. And like you said, because in the future, even if your first day in Splinterlands is today, 2 years from now, if you continue to do what obviously your channel is about, Dwayne, is putting your time and attention to the game, you will have substantial assets in Splinterlands just from playing the game and doing nothing more than that. And as such, you'll appreciate those efforts 2 years from now.
Totally. I firmly believe that, and I say that all the time. And sometimes people feel, I think they seem to think it's like it's just a tagline. I'm so convinced that it's true, and that anybody who's taking it seriously now is going to be super like overjoyed in the years to come. And I saw a cool video today by Gathering the Magic, who's one of the kind of Splinterland faithfuls. He's always in the chats, and he's always around dropping great comments, and he does videos too. He's a smaller channel. He's only got like 200 followers or something. You guys should check him out. But he did one today recently saying, Splinterlands, can I earn as a free to play? And he's kind of walked that journey, and it's important for new people to see that sort of content, because it is possible. It's just like, it's not going to translate overnight into tens of thousands of dollars, but if it did, that would be something entirely non-sustainable. This is trivial in nature on a daily basis, but those trivial payouts add up over time and then snowball in nature because they are deflationary. That means their prices will rise over a long enough time horizon. And so you might get paid pennies today for playing, but those pennies are paid in non-fungible tokens that will themselves appreciate. And so you get paid 2 or 3 Pellicore mercenaries today for your game play, and that's worth 2.5 cents. But in 3 or 4 years, when Pellicore mercenaries are $1 each, that's $3 or $4 for those Pellicore mercenaries, and times 365 days, times 4 years. And so that's the power of something like this. Trivial in nature and over the short term, but meaningful in nature because of their deflationary nature across a long enough time horizon.
Yep, absolutely. And maybe I can share, I think the with this data, the next set of data, which I think is even more interesting to look at and maybe more surprising, is just adding basically these lines at the bottom, these last 5 or 6 lines. But it's, I think, important to look at, because you might say and look at these numbers like, why would, as a tract owner, why would I invest $13,000 into max summoners for my plots of land? We don't know how much production of items and spells would even generate an income. You could invest $13,000 just in summoners and get like 2,000 back, and that would be a terrible investment of money, right? So there's no indication that people would actually even do what this chart suggests. And so what I wanted to do is look at that, and I took some data points for us to see, is it even feasible? Ask the question, is it even feasible for a tract owner or a plot owner or a region owner to try and max out their land for workers? Would it even make sense? And if you look at the current card market, our 24-hour volume right now is $44,609, which is actually down. In good times, like in the Untamed, Q3, Q4 times, and even recently when the rank reward changes happened, we were averaging over $100,000 a day in card market sales. So we're down a little right now. And the card rental market average for volume is actually up now to $7,309. It was actually half that to start the season. So it's actually doubled here this season, which is good. And then this varies, obviously. But where you look at this, you would say, okay, if the card volume is 44,000, and we can say that, and what Matt has said in specifically town halls in the past, is that if you look at the card market volume, that is what you can use as a guide to say what is the market cap of items and spells potentially in the future. He's saying, basically you could say maybe it's a 1-to-1 or something along those lines. So with this, we could say, well, at the current card market volume on a daily basis, the average plot holder, if you have 150,000 plot holders, is only going to make 30 cents a day. Even if you double this to 100,000, it's only 60 cents a day, which you would say, well, there's no way I'm putting $13,000 into summoners if I'm only going to make 30 cents a day. But you have to realize that the card market's mature. It's been around for 4 years, and it's not the volume by day that you have to look at. It's the total card market cap, because when items and spells come into the game, no one's going to have them, right? So there's 0 on the market today, and in the future they'll be introduced slowly as landowners make them. So the current card market cap of all the Splinterlands NFT cards is $99.8 million. And this is what's very interesting, is if you take that card market cap and divide it equally amongst all the available land holders, it makes the card market cap per plot holder $665 today. Now you can get a plot of land right now for, I haven't checked Hive Engine, but let's say between $150 and $200.
Yeah.
And when you look at this, a plot of land to max it out is $131 for a summoner and like $15 for monsters. So let's just say $150. So let's say you buy a plot of land for $150, you buy the summoner and the monsters, it's another $150, so $300 is your cost of land. Well, the market cap is saying that roughly that plot of land is worth 2x, more than 2x your investment right now. So the alpha here that I'm sharing with you today is, if you think that some of these numbers might make sense, and that what Matt has said could be true, and that the item and spell market cap could mirror the card market cap over time, then land plots could be an opportunity. Like we talked about titles earlier, zig when other people zag. Look at opportunities of what's around the corner, what may be a lower priced asset today that could appreciate in the future. Well, I'm sharing with the audience today, if you're on Splinterlands TV, some of these numbers, so you can look at it and, take that into your calculations and what you want to look at buying here in the future for Splinterlands. So,
wow, dude, that's really mind blowing. And guys, he told me a little bit about this before we got started, but shared this with me. But I mean, I'm not I'm not the sharpest pencil in the toolkit, so like it took having to sit through and listen and watch the numbers be explained, like, and dude, this is mind blowing. This is gigantic stuff. Like the amount of consumption. Like I've heard so, and Dragon commented, he's like, I'm freaking out. He's like, I already knew all this, but the numbers make it real, and I totally agree. Like I've heard this, and I've heard one summoner, 5 or 6 monsters, and you don't, and people would say, you don't know how many cards that's going to be, guys. Like that's going to soak up the rental market, and then prices necessarily drive higher. It's going to soak up the sell market, and then buying and selling prices necessarily drive higher. And then your portfolio takes a positive turn, a significant one, because there's so much buying pressure there. But it hasn't been real until you point out, just like that one that's really slapping me in the face is the 51 max level Chaos Legion rare cards being consumed by the land, and there aren't that many. And then like the market cap probably Matt said that the market cap is probably going to equal the card market cap, and that would help me on this one part, Tails. That's going to translate if the card if the items and spell market equates to what we currently understand the card market to equate to, that would be enough to merit like a $665 per plot payout. Is that, am I understanding you correctly there?
Yeah, I mean, if you do linear extrapolations, obviously the Splinterlands economy is much more complicated than straight linear math. But here, the if you extrapolate the current card market cap divided by the available plots of land, if there's a linear equation, now obviously there's a time factor there too, is because it's not like all of the NFTs are going to be available on the market immediately for everyone to consume. So it's actually probably a higher upside longer term on this pricing than's built in. But that would be $665 per plot of land. And obviously the numbers that we're saying here is it's roughly, using the 6 monster model, it's roughly about $150 right now to staff that land fully with the cheapest monster summoner combinations, which means, again, that's a cost of doing business. But you can imagine that the cost of doing business by doing that is going to increase your productivity to, again, generate items and spells, which over time would generate that value. Now, it's also known that a single plot of land is not going to be able to necessarily produce items by itself. It may require some trading and some DeFi elements to get wood or whatever else you need to create the items that you need. And there's also factors like buildings and DEC and other stuff that we've talked about, which is separate. But in the grand scheme of things, what it's showing is there's an arbitrage opportunity in potentially the anticipated value of a plot of land and its current selling price.
Wow, I suspect that this is, to me, this is, like I said earlier in the beginning of the video, like, understanding the fundamentals is deeply important, and that should inform our understanding of what we and our expectations of what we're looking at here. And to me, this is like a fundamental breakdown, an analysis of like, here's the obvious stuff, guys. Like, we know, we've been told that it's probably going to look like this. We need this many cards per plot. That is measurable, and that would do X to the market. And it's like, this seems very well thought out to me, and I actually think this is almost like an action plan to me. But I don't have excess cash at this moment. I would love to get more plots of land. I do think that this is going to have an impact. Like, I think people are going to see this, and they're going to be like, oh, okay, well, I can't let $170 plots of land exist. And rightly or wrongly, like, everybody makes their own decisions. And I know you would say, like, this is not financial advice, but I mean, this is thoughtful, and it, to me, resonates as, logical and fair. Now, there is nuance around, like, well, how big is that item and spell market going to be? And, there's also going to be things like, we didn't talk about this yet, but some plots of lands will go unused, and that will have some implications for, and it'd be really hard to measure, but certain resources might be even less. Like, if certain people and tracks or regions even are not being utilized, Aggie and Matt have said they'll just kind of be unfarmed. And if that's so, then maybe that would mean that certain resources would be even more scarce, and that would translate to your resources, if you were accessing those resources, being more profitable. It's so hard to know, but this should really stir up some excitement for everybody who's paying attention.
Yeah, and obviously there's certainly not financial advice. I mean, don't make any decisions based on this alone. But
Right.
the point is, do your own research, right? Do your own research and look into it. But the numbers are out there. If you want to make your own models and try and understand what this could mean, I just share it with you because I thought it was interesting to look at the numbers when you actually put it on paper and you look at it. And I think it's also interesting that there's tons of things you can do in Splinterlands right now. You've got liquidity pools, you got SPS. Airdrops with the GLS token we've talked about. We talked about nodes. There's so many ways you can play the non-game of Splinterlands, right? The non-ranked battle, the non-guild brawl, the non-tournament part of Splinterlands. And some people find it fun, other people don't want to deal with it at all. I personally find it fun. I've talked about it as the game within the game. Just kind of it's a way to keep score, and you're keeping score not with points but with dollars and cents in crypto.
Yeah.
But again, we just never know. The good news here is there's lots of options to consider, and all of those are probably good options. Again, I don't know. I'm not a financial advisor, but obviously I have a biased view on this. But I think it's interesting. And one other point I'll make, and I think Elephantium and Unreal Chris J mentioned as well, is that the number here, 51 for rare and 45 for common, is based on the reward card print rates. The actual Chaos Legion set itself print rates are actually lower than that, so it'd actually be a higher number if you looked at those cards as well. So.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, man, this is crazy. I need to I'm definitely gonna rewatch this, and I'm gonna think this through more thoroughly. And I mean, I've been slowly reacquiring land. I attract and I let most of it go to buy a variety of things, and I'm glad I did that. But now that prices of land have kind of come down to a place where I'm like, okay, this is serious, and land is life-changing. And I've kind of always thought land has and remember, when you buy a plot of land, it could be a common, a rare, a epic, or a legendary. It could have a keep or a castle. It could have totems and buildings and whatnot. And it's like, it could be this resource or that resource. And there are certain ones that will be way more profitable than others. And so just like a pack of cards, when you open that plot of land, it will have some randomness that could be so amazing, which is really exciting. And I've thought for a long time that probably $500 is the base value. That's just my mind. Like I had no numbers like this to kind of bring to the conversation. I just was like $500 to maybe 5,000. That's my idea of what seems realistic, based on one, confidence that Splinterlands will do this well, two, that the in-game card market, the item and spell card market, the item and spell market will be revolutionary to the game of Splinterlands, and that people will continue to want to play Splinterlands, so they'll want those assets. I think they're going to be game changing, because when you see that battlefield set and the battle is about to go, but you have another minute or two to drop an item or a spell that can transform that loss into victory, I think that's going to be a big deal. And I think when you understand the leaderboards, and when you understand the growing value of the rewards being paid out at a higher level in this game, but also even in brawls now, as we know, SPS is going to be paid out there. I think those items and spells are going to be really desired. And so for me, I've mentally imagined land is worth between 500 and 5,000. And 5,000 is going to be those legendaries with the castles and the keeps or whatever, and 500 is going to be something cheap. But either way, that's if I'm right about that, and maybe I am wrong, but if I'm right, then 175 or whatever it is today is a steal.
Yeah, and it goes back just to this whole flywheel that the team is creating. Again, this value here, again, is linear. Do your own math and make your own assumptions. But if you look at these numbers again, if you fully staff your land with max monsters, again, this value is not necessarily related to what happens in the card market when all these cards start getting pulled off the rental market, off the sales market, off the battle market, right? And start going to land. And then we also haven't talked about necessarily in this stream about what happens to DEC when you have buildings on land that you upgrade, right? What happens to the DEC peg, and what happens in turn to SPS when you burn SPS to create more DEC. So all of these things are working in harmony to ultimately add value. And all this stuff is like SPS ranked battle rewards. All these things are just right around the corner. Again, why would you want items and spells? Well, you want items and spells to increase your win rates, to allow you to earn more SPS, right? In ranked battles, in tournaments, in guild brawls. So all of this is contributing to the overall game experience. And again, if one thing uplifts like plot value. You can imagine the card market also uplifting values in the game. So it kind of all works together to create value in the ecosystem. And it's not even talking about, again, the other parallel effects of Genesis Sports League and what the airdrop for the next 6 months to a year might have on that in the SPS token, and NFT drops, and it's just amazing. So when I look at the complexity and the potential for Splinterlands, this is why I get excited, is because this little spreadsheet is just one little aspect of the game that might be with us in, let's say, 6 to 9 months. And the game that we play in 6 to 9 months will probably look a whole lot different than it does today.
That's entertainment.